Hey everybody, what's going on? Dace here, and today we are going to be checking my all clear in Bullet Soul Infinite Burst on Nintendo Switch with Zenichi, which I just banged out last night. Bought the game the day before that, and yeah, I'm really excited to share my thoughts because it's not often I have mixed feelings about a game, or really even have much to point out, but yeah, there were quite a few things, and yeah, this is just a great opportunity to get into that kind of stuff. So I did jot down a bunch of notes, so I might click over to a page. You won't see anything, but if I do just go quiet for a second or two, that's probably why. I'm just double checking what I want to say and what I have on my list and all that kind of stuff. So anyway, let's get right into this. I think first I will start off with the things I really enjoyed about the game. So, first off, the visuals. I think the visuals are fantastic. Like, it's just a really solid look and feel. Colors are great. Enemy attacks are all super discernible. Like, there was never a single time where I didn't see something coming or couldn't tell what was what. So everything was great in that sense. We'll see examples of this as we go through, but the flow of events, the types of things you'd go up against, or the things that happen, that kind of stuff was really, really awesome too. Like, it's not just all blasting small enemies that show up on the screen. Sometimes you're taking out huge structures in space, or big battleships. Sometimes you're going up against alien creatures, like all sorts of really, really cool things that are just thrown into this mix. And I thought that was really refreshing. I also always love games where you have multiple bosses per stage. I think that's just fantastic. Even though some of them might not be considered bosses because it's just like, well, okay, it's just a big enemy, but some of them are just a blast to go up against. And when they have their own kind of zone, essentially, or their own time and space in which it's just you and the boss, I just consider that a boss. So that's something else I really enjoyed. If I didn't say the enemy variety, like, you just have all sorts of different enemies, and I think that's fantastic. The character variety as well, and some of the close range attacks that you have access to, I thought that was really cool. So I really liked the characters and just how they attack and the look and feel of those individuals. The soundtrack is fantastic. I like that you can actually switch between multiple soundtracks. I haven't really listened to too much of it, to be honest. This is the one I threw on, and so that's just the one I know best. Also, the sound effects are just great. Like, no complaints there. So, yeah. So all in all, like, the game looks great, feels great. Like, it controls really well. Like, the backgrounds, like, just look at some of this stuff going on, like planets, asteroids, just all sorts of really cool things. So that's kind of that stuff in a nutshell. We might as well just jump right into some of the things I wasn't as crazy about. You'll notice that in the first stage I almost didn't move at all, and I ignored a lot of the coins. I will explain why momentarily, and I pretty much do the same thing in this stage too. So I'm just gonna click open to my list again. I'm kind of going back and forth between watching the video and my file here. So for those who know me, I'm not the biggest fan of scoring. Like, there have been a select few games where I have really gone all out and I cared about it. Sometimes if you can get an extend by scoring, like an extra life, if you don't know what an extend means, then sure, I'll score to hit that amount and get an extra life if it's going to help for like a survival run. But yeah, in this game, there's really no incentive. Very quickly, when I first sat down with the game and noticed that, okay, all I'm doing is flying all over the place just to grab coins, I was like, wait a minute, this is not how I want to play this game. I don't want to be flailing about or going back and forth as they come down the screen. And from what I knew of the game, there's really no point to getting score, like unless you care about scoring high and showing that off wherever. But for me, like, you're not getting any extra lives. There's really no point. So I very quickly just decided, okay, you know what? If I don't need to move in this game, and if it's designed in a way where it fails to punish me for for not moving around, then great. I get to just coast until the game's actually throwing something at me that I need to pay attention to and deal with. So that was kind of my approach here. There were, I would say, like when I first started getting a feel for the game, there were things that tripped me up during each boss fight, but very, very, very quickly, it got to the point where we won't see it in this one because I take some sloppy hits here and there. I think I was just getting lazy at this point. But very quickly I started to no-miss all the way through all 5 stages until I would hit the true last boss. And I did this on numerous occasions. So in that sense, that's another way in which I didn't feel challenged. Like sometimes when I jump into a game, like it'll be something I really struggle with just to make it beyond the 3rd stage. So the fact that I was no-missing all the way to the very, very last boss, the same night I got it, that said to me, okay, this is not designed, like it's obviously geared toward people who want to score, but they kind of left out aspects that still keep people engaged when they don't care about scoring, like players like myself. And so in that sense, there was just a major, major imbalance, because if you can get away with just doing nothing but staying in the middle of the screen for, however many stages, then that speaks volumes. And sure, like, I love the fact that stage 3, 4, and 5 do ramp up. You need to start being more attentive. There's a lot more going on and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, even that didn't feel like a challenge. It got to the point where I wouldn't feel a threat or any sort of risk until I made it to the true last boss, because it's just a crazy, crazy fight. So that said to me, okay, this game is not challenging me in the ways that I want to be challenged. And since the TLB, there's no way to, as far as I know, there's no way to practice that in the menu or anything. You can only practice like the stage 5 and stage 5 boss, but not the true last boss. So it kind of got to the point where when I would fumble and get a game over against the true last boss, it was like, oh great, now I have to sit through 20 plus minutes of something that doesn't challenge me, doesn't really engage me. It just kind of rubbed me a certain way. It was sort of a matter of, okay, I want to clear this and then I'm fine to just, not really do much more with this right now. Sure, maybe someday I'll jump into one of the other modes or something, but there's just something missing here, for me anyway. Or something that I'm just not appreciating. And I think it's mainly the score. Like, if I was going for the score items, then sure, that would be a different story. But in that sense too, like, there's something missing as well, because the fact that you don't have any sort of way to pull them into you like in other games, like you'll notice when the treasure chest floats across the screen at different times throughout the run, I will target that, and it's not because I'm going for the coins or the medals or whatever you want to call them. I'm doing it because I like the way it looks when they're flowing out of the chest. It's just an aspect of these games that is satisfying. And so I think if they had done something a little different, where instead of having to race around to grab medals, there was just some way of bringing them into you or collecting them some other way, I would probably have gone crazy, because it would have been satisfying to actually collect them then. But since there was nothing to really keep me interested, that's why you don't see me going for any, except for like the odd time here and there if there was a cloud and I just felt like jumping into it. I'm just scrolling here, so enjoy the the visuals for just a second. And yeah, since a lot of different aspects overlap, I might repeat myself or sound like I'm repeating myself. But it's not intentional. It's just that there's a lot I just typed out here. But yeah, for instance, when I think about something like Danmaku Unlimited 3, that's just what I've been playing a lot of recently, so it's just an example that's fresh in my mind. What I love about that game is even if you are not playing for score, which in my eyes it is a huge scoring game, but even if you're like me and you're completely ignoring grazing and scoring, you still have to play your absolute best just to survive. Like, you have to go from start to finish playing the best you possibly can just to make it through. Whereas that's not the case in this game. You don't have to play your best. You can kind of just sit back and not really do much at all. And like I said, there's nothing really threatening. There's nothing that was overly engaging for me. So yeah, that's just something I noticed. Let me just see here. Well, yeah, you'll also notice that, sure, I sometimes use my burst attack during specific moments during boss fights and whatever, but for the most part, you don't really see me using it during stages to just like clear enemies or just fire it off. Like, I could technically be using it numerous times because of how quickly you can charge it. I think it's something like the higher up on the screen you are, the more charge you get per enemy kill. But like I noticed earlier, like if there's nothing in the game challenging me until the absolute final boss, the true last boss, then what's the point of firing it off? Like, you might as well keep it in reserve just for a stray bullet or something, just in case. And so I think they could have done a lot more to just, keep you on your guard, or just be throwing so much at you that you actually have to think a little more critically. There wasn't really much where, to be honest, there really wasn't much thinking that went into clearing this game, to figuring it out. It was just a very quick and easy process. And I'm not saying that because that's coming from a place of like, ooh, I've got all these skills, look at me. It just genuinely feels easy and not challenging, and I'm not sure what they were really going for. Maybe there's something I'm missing or just not understanding about it, and that's why I said earlier, I think part of it just has to do with they were probably just making it for people who really, really want to score huge totals, because I think there's the added risk of running into enemies, running into bullets when you are going for coins and stuff like that. And since I'm not doing any of that, there's obviously that risk taken away, and so therefore it just feels easier and as though it's just not a challenge. So there's that. For the most part, I think there might have even been some other things that I just didn't think of or whatever, but I think that's kind of the bulk of what I wanted to express about this game. So I think I'm just going to close that. I'm just going to watch the rest of this. And don't get me wrong, like, in ways, like, even though, sure, it felt like a bit of a drag when dying to the TLB and then needing to play through the whole run again just to experiment or practice against the TLB again or have a chance at it. There was still an aspect that was enjoyable, because it's like, I love speed killing enemies. I love destroying boss sections. Like, when you can dismantle a boss, I think that's really cool, like we're seeing right here. Like, stuff like this is really fantastic. I love just cleaning up, more or less. So it's not that even though I've said everything that I have, it's not that I despise the game or anything like that. It just struck me as a different mix of things that I wasn't expecting. I wasn't even sure what to expect to go into this. I finished up Spirit Hard mode in Danmaku Unlimited 3, and I kind of felt like giving myself a bit of a break by jumping into something else, and this is just what I went with. And so yeah, it's definitely different in that sense. But yeah, here's a great example of just like taking out a big ship, watching it fall away and explode. Like, things like this are really cool. So they definitely handled stuff like that very well. And I do like a lot of the options too. Like, I removed the character images. You can make them transparent if you want. I just got rid of them entirely because I love the look of this way more than seeing that kind of stuff. And here's one of the big structures. Like, it's really cool. Like, I genuinely enjoy stuff like this where you got two like big enemies and then you're dealing with like turrets and then a central thing firing at you too. And so even though it, yeah, like I probably mentioned, like, yeah, I don't want it to sound as though I'm just completely dissatisfied with the game. It's just that it, yeah, really just stirred something, I'm not even sure what to call it. It's just, yeah, it just struck me a certain way. But yeah, as for the TLB, like, for those who have done an all clear, like, you know how wild that fight can be. So I'm excited to get to that and just share my thoughts, but I'm not going to get too into that until we actually get there. But yeah, I cannot get over the colors in this game too. Just like those teal colored vents. And like the purples that we're seeing and all that kind of stuff and the explosions. Like, in that regard, everything is just fantastic. One thing I would have actually liked to see is some sort of indication on the boss health bar for when you are about to destroy or like finish a phase, like right there, like we just did that. Because if there was even like a little notch, I think that would have been cool. Because there were times where I just wanted to know, like, oh, how close am I to finishing this section and then going on to the next. And sure, I get, like, if someone is less experienced, then they might feel intimidated by a lot of what's going on here. And the things I'm saying, like, that, like, oh, this feels too easy and that kind of stuff, it's, excuse me, not to put anyone down, of course. It's just that, yeah, the game's lack of challenge really caught me off guard. And I feel like, yeah, I remember reading something about the first game, and there were some issues people had as well, which were kind of some of the same things I noticed immediately when playing, is just how passive the first two stages are. So even though this is Infinite Burst and they've kind of corrected certain aspects of it, I think there were some things that they didn't really get around to adjusting or improving, but it is what it is. I'm still glad to have it, to be honest. It's definitely been an interesting experience. And for those who didn't see the post on Twitter that I did, I let my daughter play this yesterday, so that's her first time playing a video game, and of course it would have to be a shmup. Get them infused while they're young. Get them hooked. So I, yeah, took a few like little video clips, which I'm planning on saving and then showing her down the road. So that's exciting stuff. Man, even though there's nothing threatening, stages 4 and especially 5 are certainly fun in their own way. Just because, like, there are just so many enemies, there's so many explosions, like, just chaos everywhere. And especially some of the larger than medium-sized enemies, I'll point them out. They're like these big white pristine ships that come in. Yeah, this dude right here, like those big white guys, like those things just look wicked. And then like, yeah, like, I'm not sure what to call this guy, like a boss of some sort, or just like a big stage enemy. Stuff like that's just really cool. Where it's just blocking the way. Sometimes those things would catch me off guard. I think the first day I was playing it, yesterday, that's when it was really something that would actually hit me, because you just don't realize they're going to appear and then they're just suddenly there. But yeah. As for the health system, that's another thing where I felt there could have been something a little more wholesome, or maybe not wholesome, but something a little more, what's the word? Like something that just felt a little more full thrown into the mix. Something where it's like you really gotta, yeah, I'm not sure how to word it. Like, it was kind of, for me, it was kind of a matter of, it didn't matter how, like, if I wanted to play so poorly, it wouldn't matter, because I know, okay, as long as I just breeze through to the end of stage 5, I'm going to be able to top up all my health anyway. So in that sense, it was just another factor that kind of felt like, okay, this game isn't actually throwing a legitimate challenge my way, or at least the kind of way I want to be challenged. One thing I do think is great is at the end of each stage how you have like a tally of 1,000 different types of scores that all just... I'm glad you can actually just hold A. Otherwise it would take a long, long time for all of that stuff to tally, but yeah, I thought that was great. I love these ones. These guys are like the souped up versions. And during this run specifically, sometimes it's only like 1 or 2, but I must have, like, maybe it's just because I speed killed them super fast, but there were like the first 2 and then the 2 simultaneously. And I had never seen that before, and that was fantastic. I really enjoy stuff like that where they just throw you double trouble. So here we are at the final boss. Very, very easy patterns to deal with. You just like tap dodge over, and each section goes away very quickly because I'm just doing a lot of damage. So it's kind of just like a back and forth, really nothing going on. This is one attack that can trip me up, but it just took a bit of practice today, like, and not like practice as in using the training mode, I just mean like doing a few runs and then I figured out like a relatively safe way to go about it. One thing I wasn't too certain about was the hitbox, but for the most part that didn't really pose an issue. So here's the true last boss. And these attacks are just something to get used to. Sometimes I would take like 3 hits just here, and it was just silly, but that time it went really well. And then this is another attack where every time I felt like I would take a million hits to this stuff. But this time I was like, you know what, I'm just going to pay closer attention and just not get hit, because this attack just can screw the whole run. And this one's a lot of fun, something to get used to. Now sometimes I have seen, I'm not sure how the attacks are triggered or like what that's all about, but there was one attack that the boss didn't do, and maybe it's just because I killed it in a certain amount of time, or the character I was using, I have no idea, but he didn't go into that attack and he was toast already, so that's that. Crazy. So anyway, thank you all so much for being here. I really enjoyed just sharing my thoughts on this game. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If you've played this, if you were thinking of getting it, maybe it's rubbing you a certain way. Certainly don't let what I say influence, because if you like the look of it, then just check it out yourself. Do whatever it is you were going to originally do or what you were feeling. But yeah, this is me just sharing based on my preferences and particulars and things I've noticed. So anyway, thanks so much. Have an awesome one, and we will see you next time.